Today, in a New York federal courtroom, Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is sex trafficking, racketeering, and more.
Pleaded not guilty to this 5-count indictment. He's looking at decades in prison if he's convicted. But his attorneys say they are ready to fight.
If this Diddy saga has you hooked, just wait. More secrets are coming out, more stars are speaking up, and things are only getting wilder from here. So hit that subscribe button right now and stay locked in. Because when the next bombshell drops, you're gonna want to be the first to know, not the last to catch up. This is just the beginning.
If you thought this case couldn't get messier, you better sit down. Because not only is Diddy staring down the barrel of a federal indictment for human trafficking, conspiracy, and financial misconduct, but now, his own son may be the one to pull the trigger in court. Yeah, Christian Combs is reportedly cooperating with federal prosecutors. And if the rumors are even halfway true, his testimony might be the piece that brings down everything. Let's start with the big reveal. Christian has allegedly handed over communications, schedules, and access logs from events he attended or helped coordinate on his father's behalf. These aren't blurry memories or off-the-cuff comments. This is structured digital data, and prosecutors are treating it like gold. Calendar entries, guest lists, private jet itineraries, things that paint a chilling picture that the celebrity lifestyle Diddy flaunted wasn't just wild, it was weaponized. That it was the framework for something way darker. And if Christian takes the stand, he could explain exactly how it all worked, from the inside. Let that sink in. We're not just talking about a former employee or a jilted friend. We're talking about Diddy's own son potentially detailing how these events were set up, how guests were brought in, who paid for what, and, most damningly, what was covered up afterward. According to court sources, Christian is being categorized as a cooperative witness with material access. Translation, he knows where the bodies are buried. And Diddy, reportedly, absolutely losing it behind the scenes. Insiders close to his legal team say he was blindsided by Christian's cooperation. He allegedly believed the family was locked down, fully briefed, lawyered up, and united. And now, he's reportedly venting to his attorneys that he was betrayed, calling it a Judas moment. Let's be real, this is not just a legal development. This is Shakespearean family drama unfolding under fluorescent courtroom lighting. And it's making everyone uncomfortable. Because while Christian hasn't spoken publicly, the moment this became part of the case file, the internet exploded. People are torn. On one hand, there's a group that's praising him. Finally, someone close enough to the situation is choosing truth over loyalty. But on the other hand, there's backlash, especially in certain cultural circles. Because what happens when a black son testifies against his father in a system already viewed with historic distrust? That question is burning through timelines, forums, and group chats everywhere. But here's what people are missing. This isn't just about snitching. This is about complicity. If Christian knew what was happening, and the prosecution clearly thinks he did, then staying silent would have made him part of the problem. And maybe that's what finally pushed him. Maybe this wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was survival. Now here's where things get legally vicious. Diddy's defense team is already moving to block Christian's testimony. Their claim that he's not a reliable witness due to emotional conflict, and that his cooperation is being coerced under prosecutorial pressure. They're trying to paint the whole thing as a desperate PR stunt by the government, meant to shock the media and damage Diddy's image, not deliver justice. But prosecutors aren't budging. Their position is that Christian Combs is not only relevant, he's essential. And they're backing it up with receipts, financial logs from companies linked to Christian, phone calls where he coordinated travel for guests, even social media messages between him and known associates of Diddy discussing events now under investigation. This is not hearsay, it's documentation, hard evidence with digital fingerprints all over it. And it gets worse. Remember those shell companies investigators have been tracking? Turns out some of them are partially registered under entities linked to Christian Combs. Which raises massive questions. Did he know? Was he listed for tax purposes? Was he being used as a front without realizing it? Or was he more involved than he let on? Depending on how he answers those questions in court, he could be cleared or cornered. Because this is where things get complicated. If Christian testifies fully and truthfully, he might get full immunity or at least some kind of cooperation agreement. But if he withholds anything, if he lies to protect anyone, perjury charges are on the table. The feds aren't playing around. This isn't just a tabloid trial. This is federal criminal prosecution tied to alleged trafficking, fraud, and coordinated silence. Everyone who steps into that witness box will be walking on a tightrope. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, people close to the Combs family are divided. Some are standing by Christian. Others are reportedly cutting ties. And the ones trying to stay neutral, they're panicking. Because the second Christian gets on that stand, every family member's phone could end up in discovery. That's how wide this net is being cast. And while all of that brews in the courtroom, the entertainment world is still reeling. Multiple brands affiliated with Diddy are now reassessing family-focused campaigns. A sneaker line meant to feature both Diddy and Christian in a father-son rollout? Pulled. A Netflix-style docu-series on legacy artists and their heirs? Delayed indefinitely. Why? Because no one wants to touch the optics of a son testifying against his father in a trafficking trial. Especially not when the son is seen as the key to unlocking the prosecution's case. And you know what's especially ironic? Diddy spent years branding himself as a family-first mogul. The whole Love rebrand. The photo shoots, the hip-hop dad of the year posts. And now, that narrative is breaking in front of the same cameras that once helped him build it. What makes this even messier is how fans are reacting. Streaming numbers for Diddy's old music have skyrocketed in the last 2 weeks. But it's not out of support. It's morbid curiosity. People are going back to the lyrics, the interviews, the behind-the-scenes clips, searching for clues, looking for signs they missed. Trying to make sense of how a family that looked so tight could now be cracking open on national television. And you better believe that Christian's upcoming testimony will only fuel that obsession. So what are we looking at, realistically? Christian Combs is likely to take the stand within the first 3 weeks of the trial. Prosecutors are expected to introduce his materials gradually, warming the jury up to his presence before making him the centerpiece of their strategy. And when that happens, we're going to see one of the most emotionally charged moments in celebrity legal history. A son publicly detailing his father's alleged crimes in front of press, cameras, and millions of viewers. It won't just be testimony. It'll be trauma. For the courtroom, for the family, for the culture. And for Diddy, it might be the moment that turns everything against him. Now let's get into the real reason Christian Combs' cooperation has federal prosecutors so excited. It's not just about confirming what they already suspect. It's about connecting the dots they couldn't reach on their own. Because prosecutors believe Christian doesn't just know about the operations, they think he's seen the structure. That he knows how these gatherings were organized, who handled what, and maybe most importantly, what got deleted afterward. And that last part is crucial. See, what we're learning now is that Diddy's network wasn't just about flashy access, it was about control. Control of the narrative, control of the records, control of what the public saw and what never made it past the gates. And Christian allegedly had access to that system. Sources familiar with the investigation say Christian may have managed or shared multiple temporary use devices, phones registered under dummy names, often tied to shell LLCs. These weren't burner phones in the drug dealer sense. These were event phones, often swapped out post-party. And Christian, being part of the family and the image machine, may have helped distribute or collect them. Now imagine being a juror and hearing that the man on trial allegedly used disposable tech to manage his guests at luxury mansions. That alone is going to shift how the jury views the case. It's not just chaos, it's intentional. Even more wild, there's chatter that Christian handed over voice notes and messages from years ago, some of which include internal chatter about cleaning up the schedule or handling follow-up. If even one of those is connected to an accuser's timeline, that's game over. But this isn't just a forensic case, it's a psychological one. Because think about the position Christian's in right now. Imagine knowing that your cooperation might put your father behind bars. For decades. Imagine the weight of that decision, not just for you, but for your siblings, your mother, your extended family. The shame, the fallout, the guilt trips, the threats. And now, imagine doing it anyway. This is where people get it twisted. Christian testifying isn't weakness, it's warrior behavior. Not because it's heroic in the classic sense, but because it's almost impossible to do, especially in a culture that idolizes loyalty, silence, and privacy over transparency. Christian didn't just break ranks, he broke the spell. The idea that blood automatically means blind loyalty, that fame earns immunity, that no matter what happens, you protect the brand. And that's why this is freaking everyone out in the industry. Because now, it's open season on enablers. Attorneys representing other celebrities are reportedly scrambling to assess which family members could become legal liabilities if things go south. That influencer cousin you flew out for the weekend in 2019, better hope they weren't recording. That assistant you underpaid and overworked, she might be talking now. Christian's cooperation has shifted the risk model. No longer is the fear just about lawsuits from strangers, it's about the people in your circle who've watched you operate unfiltered. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team is on total lockdown. Sources say multiple defense attorneys are being rotated off the case, some for optics, others for internal disagreements about strategy. Apparently, there's tension between Diddy's desire to fight publicly and some team members who believe a quieter, more calculated approach might be the only path left. One leak even suggested Diddy wanted to address the court directly, not just during trial, but in a pre-recorded message to the media to counter what he's calling a smear campaign. That plan was allegedly shut down immediately by legal counsel because putting him on camera right now, that's lighting a match next to a gas leak. Now let's shift to something the mainstream media hasn't picked up on yet, the financial dissection of Diddy's estate. Not the mansion estate, the business one. Prosecutors have subpoenaed accounting firms, former business managers, and contract lawyers. Why? Because they believe that the trafficking and recruitment didn't just happen casually, it was structured, funded, shielded behind philanthropic fronts, event LLCs, and ghost payrolls. This is the stuff no one wants to talk about because it's so insidious. The idea that a portion of charitable or entertainment revenue may have funded illicit activity under the guise of event production. One particular line in a sealed document reportedly links a wellness retreat hosted by one of Diddy's companies to a hospitality logistics firm that has now come under review for unregulated personal service contracting. Translation: were people being flown in underwork designations, but being used for something else entirely? That's the question investigators are trying to answer. And guess who might know exactly how that backend worked? You guessed it, Christian. Because this isn't about placing blame on a son. It's about acknowledging that he was likely in a position to see exactly how the smoke and mirrors were built. And if prosecutors can get him to pull the curtain back in front of the jury, Diddy's whole defense crumbles. Now, let's get into the silent exodus happening in real time. Celebrities who once partied with Diddy, collabed with him, or shouted him out on stage are now going radio silent. Unfollowing, untagging, scrubbing old posts. Not because they're guilty, but because they know the narrative is shifting and the public is watching who runs toward accountability versus who runs from it. And in the middle of all this, Christian, not just a son, but a symbol now of what happens when proximity to power becomes liability instead of protection, of how generations raised inside fame are now breaking rank and saying, actually, no, I won't be silent anymore. That's the shift. That's the real earthquake. And behind the scenes, other celebrity children are watching. Don't underestimate how closely other Hollywood families are tracking this. Because if Christian gets through this with credibility intact, and if his testimony helps prosecutors secure even one conviction, you're going to see a wave of exposure across the industry. Former child stars, backup dancers, personal photographers, nannies, drivers, family friends. They're all one court case away from becoming star witnesses in someone else's story. And if you think this is an exaggeration, ask yourself this. Why is it that so many people around these cases suddenly go quiet the moment subpoenas are issued? Because they know this trial isn't about a single celebrity's downfall. It's about the unwinding of the illusion that money and influence can permanently silence the people closest to the truth. And right now, Christian Combs is standing at the center of that unraveling. He might not want to be. He might not have asked for it. But whether by choice or by circumstance, he's now the person who could destroy the empire his father spent decades building. Not with bitterness. Not with revenge. but with facts. And when he takes the stand, he won't just be speaking to a jury. He'll be speaking to a whole industry that let this go on for far too long. It's the moment no one wanted to believe would come, but here we are. Christian Combs is walking toward the witness stand, and the room is dead silent. The gallery is packed. Federal agents, industry reporters, former allies sitting in the back row with sunglasses on indoors like they can somehow avoid being seen in the wreckage. The sketch artists can barely keep up. Phones buzzing in the hallway, courtroom aides darting around like something historic is about to happen. And in the middle of it all, a son about to testify against his father. He's wearing a tailored gray suit, noticeably more muted than his usual fashion-forward look. No chains, no logo flex, just a flat stare, a clenched jaw, and the eyes of someone who knows this testimony is going to haunt both of them forever. And just before he begins speaking, a journalist tweets something chilling from the press box. Diddy won't look at him. Let's sit in that for a moment. The man who built his empire on loyalty, image, and family can't look his own son in the face. That's not courtroom strategy. That's psychological collapse. Christian begins. He confirms his relationship. He outlines his role in the family brand. He talks about the music, the travel, the events, the power structure. And then slowly, methodically, the prosecution begins to guide him toward the real questions. Who booked the flights? Who arranged the guest lists? What happened after the parties ended? And the answers? They're landing like punches. Not in tone, he's calm, but in content. Every sentence is a step deeper into a world most people in the courtroom have only heard whispered about. He doesn't say, "My father did this." That's not the angle. The prosecution doesn't need that. What they need, and what Christian delivers, is the map, the framework, the operating system of Diddy's social empire, how things got approved, who handled what, where money came from, and who got paid to stay quiet. And when they pull up the records, yes, the ones Christian voluntarily submitted, linking him to transactions between shell LLCs and private vendors, he confirms it, clearly, directly. The defense looks shaken. They try to object. They call parts of his testimony opinion, hearsay, speculative. But it's no use, because the data backs him up. It's not about emotion. It's about infrastructure. Christian testifies for over 4 hours. There's a recess in the middle where he steps out with federal protection. Because make no mistake, he's now a target. Not in the hitman sense, but in the reputational sense. The betrayal narrative is already brewing in the darker corners of the internet. Some are calling him a snitch. Others are calling him a hero. Most, just stunned. Because the only thing more surreal than a son testifying against his father is watching it actually happen. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere changes. Diddy is no longer the dominant figure. His silence doesn't feel strategic, it feels hollow. Gone is the mogul. Gone is the master of media manipulation. What's left is a man sitting behind a row of exhausted lawyers, arms crossed, lips tight, watching the brand crumble. And outside the courtroom, the reactions are rolling in like an earthquake's aftershocks. Other celebrity families are panicking. YouTubers, influencers, second-generation stars, they're all watching closely. Because Christian's testimony just proves something terrifying. Proximity to fame no longer guarantees safety. If the court believes him, it sets a precedent, not just legally, but culturally. That speaking out, even from inside the house, is not only valid, it's essential. In some circles, the support for Christian is overwhelming. Comments reading, "He did what had to be done. No one's above the law. This is how generational cycles end." People are calling him the most important whistleblower in recent celebrity memory. But of course, the backlash is equally loud. People accusing him of betrayal, opportunism, legacy destruction. Because when your last name is Combs, the expectations are different. You're not just part of a family, you're part of a franchise. And this testimony just wrecked the script. But here's what people aren't saying enough. Christian's not the one who broke this family. He's the one holding the mirror. It's what he reflected back that's ugly. Because when you build an empire on control, secrecy, and coercion, eventually, someone tells the truth. And now that he has, the fallout is just beginning. Brands that were monitoring the situation are pulling out officially. A major liquor partnership tied to Diddy's legacy brand has terminated its contract. Digital streaming platforms are internally reviewing whether to remove editors' picks and auto-place playlists tied to his catalog. Even BET, which once hosted Diddy Appreciation Nights, has reportedly shelved multiple archival projects indefinitely. And it's not just about distancing, it's about preparing. Because once the public hears what was allowed to happen for so long, they're not just going to blame Diddy. They're going to ask, who else helped? Who looked away? Who stayed silent? And while all this unfolds, Christian returns to the courthouse through a private side entrance. The prosecution team, reportedly relieved, they got what they needed. He didn't flinch. He didn't fold. But what happens now? What happens when someone who grew up inside the machine decides to burn the blueprint? For Diddy, this might be the final chapter. Not because he's already convicted, he's not, but because his narrative is gone. The image, shattered. The family brand, compromised. The silence, broken. And once that happens, you can't go back. You can't repackage. You can't rebrand. You can't love your way out of it. Because your own son just told the world, I saw it, I was there, and I'm not protecting it anymore. And honestly, that's more powerful than any guilty verdict. So what comes next? The trial continues. More witnesses, more leaks, more reckoning. But this moment, Christian Combs standing up, looking his father's legacy in the face, and choosing truth over silence, that was the breaking point. Not just for Diddy, but for an entire era of celebrity protection, an entire generation of enablers, an entire system built on fear, image, and manipulation. And if you're watching this thinking, that's just one family story, think again, because the ripple effect is already here. And the next wave might hit your favorite star. Stay ready. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Christian was right to testify? Was this justice, betrayal, or something deeper? And if you're still watching, you know what to do. Subscribe. Stay locked in. We're tracking every leak, every lie, and every courtroom bombshell. Because this trial is changing everything, and we're just getting started.